Hello friends, welcome back. So in the last video we saw about DNA replication, and as I told you I'll be covering the part of biological concepts also. So in this video you'll be seeing about, like, we'll just start off with human physiology, and I know it's the toughest of all the chapters and you feel like how to study this and how to find it very easier. So let us start off with digestion and absorption in this session. So we know that digestion, it is the process which is involved in the consumption of food, right? So food is actually going through the mouth. So food, why do we need food? Food is one of the basic requirement in order for us to enable the survival of living organisms. And we actually consume very complex substances which includes carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals and the fats. So how does the digestion process also being carried out? And how is it being converted into simpler substances? So everything is very complex, right? So these have to be broken down into simpler substances, and this will help in the providing of energy for our regular activities. So this process is called as digestion, so which includes the complex substances which is getting converted into the simpler ones. This process is called as digestion. A very simple definition of digestion. So when we talk about digestive system, we actually start off with the alimentary canal. So we take food through the mouth. So the mouth is the first part of the digestive system and the ending is through the anus. So this picture is actually showing a very clear idea of what a digestive system is. And this system is 5 to 7 meters long, and it consists of many specialized regions. So, what are those regions? We have the mouth, then we have the stomach, we have the pancreas, then we have the small intestine, large intestine, in liver, and finally we have the anus. So, how to remember all the parts without even forgetting one part? So, let me start off with mouth. Then you will have the oral cavity, and then the pharynx. Then we have the esophagus. Then coming on to the stomach and the small intestine, large intestine, and finally the anus. So you could just remember it like this: MOP, OSSLA. So MOP, OSLA. So this will enable you to just remember it. So when you try to tell MOP, it is mouth, oral cavity, pharynx, and OSS will be esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and La, that is large intestine and anus. So in this way you can remember all the parts. And coming to the mouth, so mouth is actually the initial part, and it is being surrounded by the upper and the bottom limbs. So this is actually leading to the oral cavity. When we see the oral cavity, it actually consists of the soft palate as well as the hard palate. So what is this palate actually involved in? The palate actually enables the easy chewing. So initially we taken the food, it has to be chewed in our mouth, and this palate, that is the soft and the hard, is actually enabling the easy chewing and the breathing at the same time. And we have the teeth in the mouth. So what are these tooths? So chewing is done by palate, then we have the breaking down of food and all by the tooth. And we have to know about the structure of tooth also. And we could see that there is a particular arrangement of the tooth over here, and this arrangement is actually, we call it as thecodentin structures. Coming to the structure of the tooth. So I have given you a very small clear picture of the structure of tooth, and it is also a very important concept to be remembered. So tooth, when we see, it is actually made of three regions. One, we have the crown, then we have got the root over here, and then we have the cement. So these are the three structures which are involved in the tooth. So we could see that crown is actually very visible over here, right? So the first part will be the crown, then we have the socket. Like in this particular socket we have the tooth root like structure, and finally we have the neck. So what is this neck? Actually, it is the junction between the crown and the root. And in between these, we have got the enamel and the dentine. So, what is enamel and dentine? Enamel, you could see that it is the bony structure over here, and dentine, it is the surface which is being covered by the enamel. So, this is a very simple structure, like very simple explanation of the structure of tooth. Now one could see that we have different types of teeth. So this is also an important question. So like, what is the structure of teeth and what are the types of teeth, in case when you see take the concept of digestion and absorption. So adult human tooth, it actually has 32 permanent teeth, and we have four different types, right? So one will be the incisors, then we have the canines, premolars, and then we have the molars. And this arrangement of tooth is called as the heterodont dentition. And how, what is the formula which is actually given? We have the formula as 2123 divided by 213t, and it is one of the most commonly asked questions in the NEET examination. So this you have to remember it very carefully. So there will be four options which will state the formula which is used for the arrangement of tooth, and the correct option will go with 2123 by 2123. And what are the different types? We saw that incisors, canines, premolars, and molars are there. And what are the purposes of these types of the teeth? So initially incisors, they are actually chisel shaped and they're used for cutting of the food. Then we have got the canines, and they are actually very sharp and conical with the pointed tips. And we have the premolars and the molars. So the premolars is used for crushing and the grinding, and molars is also used for crushing and the grinding. So these are the different types of the teeth along with the shape of that particular tooth in the digestive system, like starting with the alimentary canal of mouth, and then we have the functions of each type of the teeth. Now coming on to the pharynx. So initially we started off with the mouth, that is the alimentary canal, and then we are now moving on to the part of pharynx. So in pharynx, it is actually of three types. We have the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. So in this picture you could see that I've just given a very small representation. So this is nasopharynx, then we have the middle part which is called as the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx is being present at the end of the esophageal sphincter. Now moving on to the part of stomach. So we saw about mouth, then we have the pharynx, and then coming on to the central part of the alimentary canal. So what is the stomach actually? It is the most dilated structure which is being present in between the esophagus and then the small intestine. And it is the most central organ of the alimentary canal. So we have three major parts. We have cardiac stomach, fundus stomach, and the pyloric stomach. So cardiac stomach, it is the uppermost portion into the esophagus, like into which the esophagus actually opens. And then we have the fundus stomach, this is the middle portion. And then finally we have the pyrolic stomach, which is the lower portion. So the cardiac stomach is actually opening into the esophagus, and the pyrolic stomach is actually opening into the first part of small intestine. As we saw that the stomach is lying between the esophagus and small intestine, the initial part will open into esophagus and the final part will open into the small intestine. Once we cross the stomach, that we saw, like we saw the final part is opening into the small intestine. So what is the small intestine actually? The small intestine is actually again divided into three main parts. So this three main parts, it includes the duodenum, Then we have the jejunum and the ileum over here. The small intestine, it is the longest part of the alimentary canal, and it is actually about 6 meter long in humans. So duodenum is actually U-shaped and widest and the shortest part of the small intestine. Then we have the jejunum, which is the middle part, and ileum, it is the final part of the small intestine. So we saw these are the different parts of the alimentary canal, starting off with mouth and then coming to the pharynx, then the stomach. Stomach is opening into the small intestine, and small intestine is again divided into duodenum, jejunum, and the ileum. And we also saw that we are going to deal about absorption. So what are these absorption? So absorption is the process whereby the food is actually absorbed. The absorption is being aided by certain surfaces or the folds. The food is actually getting absorbed onto particular surface and it is actually getting digested. So what are those surface areas of the small intestine which aids in the process of absorption is what we are going to see next. So we have certain folds, like we have the, like, let me just show you. So we have the mucosal folds, the inner folds of the small intestine. We have the circular folds. You see that like this it will be. So these kind of folds actually will enable the process of absorption. So the folding like structures, and it is actually not flat. Then we have the villi. You could see that the inner mucosal surface of small intestine has the villi. So these are also surface like projections which aids in the process of absorption. And coming on to the large intestine, so when we see that small intestine is actually capable of the process of absorption, right? Whereas large intestine is not capable of this process. Why is it so? Because they lack the villi and the microvilli. And this large intestine is actually divided into three main parts. One, we have the cecum, the colon, and the rectum. Cecum is actually a very small pouch like structure, and it is connected to the terminal part of small intestine, and it actually acts as a host for various symbiotic microorganisms. So what are symbiotic microorganisms? So symbiotic microorganisms are where both the population of microorganisms are being equally benefited. So those kind of, like, one actually provides shelter, the other actually gives food. So in this way, both the different groups of microorganisms get benefited in this particular part. That is how we call a symbiotic association. Then we come on to the colon. So colon, we see that it is the longest part of the large intestine, and we have the ascending colon, transverse colon, and the descending colon. And final part of large intestine will be the rectum. So the rectum, what happens, it is the place where the the fecal matter is being stored temporarily, and after all the process of digestion, absorption, and everything is over, it actually leads to the anal canal, and which opens out to the anus. So this is a very short video and very interesting video which actually covers the concepts of the digestive system and the process of absorption. So in this video, I've covered all the important points in the human physiology. Like, I've started off with the human physiology and the part of digestion and absorption. And this short video has got all the important points, and it will be very useful for you. Thank you.